my journey with recovery began 25 years ago. And a friend of mine said, you know, it wasn't just you and people who had addictions that have recovered. We're all recovering from something. And I found that to be a very interesting theory, that we're all recovering from something. And it can be a useful question for you as you listen to this talk. But whether that's true or not, I noticed one thing, that there are very important lessons that come from a program that has saved thousands of people's lives. And I'm talking about 12-step programs. There's a 12-step program for nearly everything. And I did some research on Wikipedia last night. Alcoholics Anonymous, Adult Children of Alcoholics, Alcoa, Cocaine Anonymous, Clutterers Anonymous, Codependents Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Marijuana Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Neurotics Anonymous, Nicotine Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Pills Anonymous, Racists Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, Workaholics Anonymous. And those are just half of the ones that you can find on Wikipedia. And I'm sure there are so many more of these 12-step programs. And sometimes they're referred to generically as AA programs or 12-step programs. And you can actually have a 12-step meeting with 2 or more people. And I remember back in the days, the place we were going to meet was closed. And so just 4 of us got in a car and we had our books with us and we had a 12-step meeting. So it can happen anywhere. And in those days, in the meeting rooms, they were filled with smoke and everyone was drinking coffee. And you were thinking, gosh, these people are crossing from one addiction to the other. But I guess it's better smoking and coffee than some of the other addictions that were going on. But nowadays, my understanding is that there may be coffee, but there's not cigarette smoke filled rooms anymore. So besides that, one of the things I remember about walking into my first 12-step meetings was that the atmosphere wasn't too much unlike a church. Everyone smiled, everyone was friendly, everyone welcomed you. There was no judgment. The vibe in the room was really high. And so this place could serve as an incubator for healing and recovery, just like any spiritual center can. And to me, the greatest thing about AA or 12-step programs is that you get to share your story. There is a healing in sharing your story. There can be sharing your story too much, as we've all heard, but if you've never really sat down and told your story with someone who as Greg Levoy would put it, is a generous listener. I mean, you know how healing it can be to tell your story to such a person. So today I'm going to tell my story. And I thank you for your generous listening. And this is a story of my 6-year journey of addiction and what I learned along the way. I was the white sheep of the family. I was the valedictorian in junior high. That's when I began to find my brain. And well, I was actually kind of known as the class brain starting in 3rd grade, when I really began to engage with what was going on in the classroom. I was the first one in my family tree to get a 4-year college degree. But before graduating from college, I ran into some problems. But along that path, I was also starting to explore my professional life as a drummer. I was endorsed by several international percussion manufacturers. UCLA had called me. I was attending San Jose State, and they called me and they said, would you come down here and teach our marching band? We'll get you into this college. We'll pay for it. And so I did. So I thought I was on top of the world. I thought I was, undefeatable. And I didn't see the train wreck that was coming. later on, as I took an inventory of my life, I saw, oh yeah, that train wreck was coming long before. I mean, drugs is just, to me, a symptom and a side effect of a greater problem. So during my senior year at UCLA, I fell in love with a girl, and the big problem was she was a drug user. And I went from being scared of drugs, really scared of drugs, and judging people who did them. Even just, nowadays it's like marijuana is kind of, oh yeah, it's cool and everybody does it or whatever. No, if anybody around me wanted to smoke marijuana, I thought they were evil. And I went from there to actually smoking it, and to then becoming addicted to methamphetamine. And 3 months later, I was living at the dealer's house, and I was pulling all-nighters while studying for UCLA finals. I gave some of my soul, I gave some of my future, I gave perhaps some of my health away to this false dream of drugs and the drug lifestyle. I was actually on a drug binge during UCLA finals, and I had been up for 3 days straight, and I was hallucinating during my final exams. And so I'm lucky to have graduated. And I don't want to describe all of the adventures or misadventures of what would become part of my world, but I lost 25 pounds. I had black bags under my eyes. I couldn't sleep most nights, and I carried this problem from the bright lights in big city of Los Angeles to the bright lights in big city of San Francisco as I started to build a marketing career in the financial district, all along going to work every day and miraculously never getting fired from a single job. In the darkest days, I remember waking up and drinking straight Bacardi, pulling the bottle from under the bed, drinking it first thing in the morning, and then doing a line, and then maybe eating a little breakfast. And I would not get on BART until I was good and high and drunk. But that just got me back to normal, right? I was so low, it just got me back to what felt like a state of normalcy. But grace would eventually find me. And it happened in an interesting way. I got a DUI, and 3 police cars pulled me over on code 3. That story I will not tell here, but that did not stop me. I had a second DUI later, and I was pulled over by 3 police cars again, the magic number 3. And that was 3 blocks from my house, and my blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit. I was high, but for some reason, they let me walk home. Because I was lucky, because the consequences of a second DUI would have been just earth-shattering. But did that stop me? No, that did not stop me. My dad died in 1995, and I was using drugs through it all. I spoke at his funeral from one of these states of having enough drugs and alcohol just to get back to normal. And that didn't stop me. Somehow I landed a higher paying job, and I moved into the Silicon Valley, and my boss said something to me. He said, "David, the impression is created that you aren't here very much." And it was true, because I would show up at work, I would work for an hour and a half, and then I would go down to the local bar and drink 2 Bacardi Cokes or 3. And then I would come back to work, and then I would take a long lunch. And so this craziness was going on. So they say that no one can lead you to quit. You must quit when you are ready, or some say when you hit the bottom. But I actually didn't hit the bottom. For some reason, I think I escaped the destiny that most people have in front of them that are serious addicts. And that destiny is usually jails, institutions, hospitals, or death. And I wasn't lucky. It was grace. I'm convinced it was the grace of God. I decided to take back my power on January 17th, 1997, I remember that day I was driving, my girlfriend was driving the car because I had my license taken away. I was going across the Dumbarton Bridge. It was at night to get drugs. And I just had this epiphany hit me. And I decided that I was no longer going to let the drug dealer or the drug be the owner of my happiness. All my happiness was either in the drug dealer's back pocket or it wasn't, right? And if my drug dealer didn't get it, that was my whole reality, was just waiting for that action, for that drug dealer to score. And for some reason, I was sick and tired of giving my happiness away, giving my power away to someone and something else. And I said to my girlfriend, turn around the car. And I just started crying. I will never forget that moment. It was on the Dumbarton Bridge. And so we turned around at the other end where there was like a little turnaround area right before you hit the toll booths. And that is the moment. And from that moment on, I never had another dose of methamphetamine. And I intentionally lowered my alcohol and cigarettes, which I had also taught myself to use to balance it all out. I titrated those down. And fast forward, my life skyrocketed. Everything that day changed with that decision. That boss who said, hey, David, the perception is that you're not here a lot. They gave me his job because he wasn't doing. So pretty soon I had a staff of 7, which I haven't had a staff of. I never had a staff before. I was promoted from a manager to a director, but then the real work began. Some people think that when you quit, that it gets easier. Well, certain things do get easier. Sleeping gets easier, you get healthier, but then you find out that all these things that you had on hold for years are waiting for you. And so you have to deal with life on life's terms. They say in the 12-step program, one day at a time, right? On life's terms. So I had a lot of time to reflect over these years since those days. Drugs were happiness for me at one point. They were cool. But the reality is that drugs are a lie. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So speaking of truths and lies that I learned in my recovery, and this is not just for those who are recovering from an obvious addiction of some kind. I think there's some truth and wisdom in here for different situations that may be subtle. So the truth for me, what happened for me was I went to drugs because I was self-medicating depression. I probably just needed, at that time, some Prozac or something. I was struggling to be perfect, and I was putting so much pressure on myself to be perfect that I couldn't take the pressure. So I was escaping as well. And there was something else in me that was punishing myself because I believed that I deserved to suffer. I believed that I didn't deserve to be happy. And the truth was, all of this was a scream for help. I was doing this for the attention that someone or something would rescue me. And the other truth was that with drugs, even though you get into them because they're fun at first, the lows are as low as the highs are high. So if you're up 20 miles into the sky with your highs, you're going to wake up the next morning 20 miles underneath the ocean, underneath the surface of the earth. And then you're trying to come back to some state of normalcy. So you're living this lie. So those were the truths. And I'll say one more is that this alternative lifestyle, the drug teaches you, or it tries to say to you, that reality in its own terms is boring. Reality is not exciting. The drugs are exciting. This is where you want to be. So you begin to justify and make up stories. Oh, I'm an anarchist. That's why I do drugs. oh, I'll do drugs, but I'll just keep on drinking a lot of water and drink some health drinks so I can keep on doing drugs because drugs is where I want to be. The government's trying to control us, and that's why I do drugs, right? So you make up these lies because you are convinced that reality is boring. And quite the opposite is true. So the gifts in this, I wrote down some gifts. I'm lucky to be alive. That's a gift. And it's a much longer story, but I truly am lucky to be alive. They say in shamanism that every initiate goes through a process of a near-death experience. Well, drugs was mine. Another gift, I gained a closer relationship with my sister, and that began when I had kind of overdosed, or what I felt was overdosing on LSD, and I was just crying the next morning, just on the floor of my bedroom in Los Angeles. And I called my sister, and that began a beautiful relationship and a closeness of between she and I. And we began to do this inventory of, hey, did mom and dad do those things? Oh my gosh, was it growing up really crazy in our household? Yeah. For you too? Did that happen to you too? It's like we realized we had this totally dysfunctional childhood, which led slowly to all of these wrong decisions in life. So that was one of the gifts for me. And I didn't get straight through the traditional route of the 12-step meetings. It happened later, but I did go to hundreds of meetings, high to most of those meetings, but the learnings stuck with me. So I think they had a delayed effect and came to me. So let me just talk a little bit about what I learned in the 12-step programs, mostly AA, but they're all the same 12 steps. Each 12-step meeting obviously has 12 steps that you focus on, and they are: 1, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol or whatever you became addicted to. We admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. This reminds me of, this need of I release and I let go, right? I let the spirit run my life. This is a parallel message that formed later in my spiritual life. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. This reminds me of the first principle of unity, that God is all there is, the one presence and one power. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him or her, or it. Step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Some might say we've got to clean our side, we got to sweep our side of the street instead of worrying about someone else's. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. It's kind of like the meditation. We were totally ready to fall into this state of trusting in our divine selves. It's this surrender that's really where the power is. Isn't that a paradox? Surrender is where we get our power. Step 7, we humbly asked him or her to remove our shortcomings. So we were willing. Step 8, we made a list of all the persons we had harmed, and we became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, we continued to take a personal inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. And here's another uncanny spiritual one. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him or her, praying only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. That's kind of the fourth principle of unity, right? Step 12, the final step. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics or addicts everywhere and to practice these principles in our own affairs. For those of you who understand the 5 principles of unity, that's pretty much the 5th principle, almost word for word, it seems. So one question I ask now is, why are there so many parallels between the 12 steps of AA and support groups and New Thought principles? Why? I don't know why. Maybe it's because truth is truth and it happens everywhere. But I did find out that Ernest Holmes and Myrtle Fillmore talked a lot about alcoholism and addiction and recovery, because back in those days they were coming out of the Great Depression during the advent of all these religious movements. There were people that were poor and addicted, and so some of this came into it, some of this thinking, recovery thinking. And Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, is said to have met and exchanged ideas with Ernest Holmes, the founder of Center for Spiritual Living. Back then it was called Religious Science. So that I would love to find out more about that interaction and be a fly on the wall in that room. So there are life lessons, I will sum it up to say, beyond just addiction. It goes to codependency. It goes to all kinds of things that may be plaguing your life. And some of the great teachings of AA are written in this thing called the Big Book. Or is it the Blue Book? I think it's the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's blue and it's big. It's long. And on page 417 of this book, it says what I think is the most important thing that book has to say. So here it is. It says, and acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. Acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. When I'm disturbed, it is because I find some person, some place, something or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, until I accept that place or thing or situation exactly the way it is supposed to be in this moment. And I have to realize that, going on to the next paragraph, nothing, absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world outside, but what needs to change in me and my attitudes. So that's powerful. That is powerful. And it's not saying that you have to accept everything the way it is and that you can't change it. And I'll explain more about that in a moment, because there is something very powerful that happens in every 12-step meeting, and it is one of the most famous prayers ever. It's called the Serenity Prayer. And at every meeting, it is recited. It goes like this: God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay? And for those, not everyone may have heard that before, so I'd like you to repeat that after me, one line at a time. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And if you're ever searching for a meditation theme, you can take any one of these lines. Just, God grant me serenity, right? God grant me the wisdom to know the things I can change, and the rest just let it be. It's such a beautiful and powerful prayer. So, as I look back over my 25 years of sobriety, I think I did the math right. I think the most important things I learned were acceptance from page 417 of the Big Book, courage from the Serenity Prayer, embracing a higher power, which is really the 12 steps summarized into 2 words, right? Higher power. And the most important single thing I took away from my recovery was taking my power back and reaching that epiphany of a moment where I said, no more am I going to give away my power to someone else. And it's not like that moment solved everything. There were many moments where I have to revisit that and grow higher and higher. So I say this: exiting our unhealed past and experiencing and rising to our spiritual magnificence it's a privilege. It's an honor to have this journey. So whether you're recovering from an addiction or whether you're recovering from resistance, from unforgiveness, from anger, from post-trauma, from anxiety, from fear, from some physical ailment, you can find some wisdom in this taking back of your own power. And you can find serenity knowing that God is all you need, because God is bigger than all of your problems. So one last thing I'll say is that every 12-step meeting ends with a moment where they stand up and they join hands. And I think they say the serenity prayer. And then the last thing they say after that goes like this. They look at each other, they giggle, and they say, "It works if you work it, so keep coming back." And I say to you, that is no different from the spiritual work we're doing here at Unity San Jose. It works if you work it, right? The more you put into it, the more you get back. The more you show up, the more it shows up for you, the more it becomes realized for you. So let's keep coming back for ourselves. Let's keep coming back for our future. Let's keep coming back for each other. And so it is.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am. Letting fear and worry fall away from me, I open my eyes and see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. When I lose myself, when it seems I've lost my way, when I go inside and quiet my mind, I can hear Spirit gently say, there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. There is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free.
So I invite you to settle into this moment of meditation with me. Taking a deep breath and closing your eyes if you're comfortable. I fear nothing. I'm in this present moment where all is well. Where I'm totally safe. Totally safe. I relax my shoulders into that safety. I relax my whole self into that safety. And in that state of safety, the constant stream of blessings continues to flow to me, as it always has, flowing to every aspect of my life and my being. I fear nothing in this space, in this present moment, where all is well, where I'm totally safe. And so let's breathe again into that space. In this space, nothing has power over me. In this present moment, this is every moment of my life. And I'm totally safe. So in this space, I can open up myself, I can open up my heart to a place of pure receptivity where the true me dwells. So in this space, my body is being healed right now, every cell of my body. And in this space, I am totally provided for in this blanket of abundance. Which blesses me infinitely. And in this space, my thinking, my thoughts are healing, and any doubts that I carry as a habit are just melting away as I begin this new dawning, this new awareness, this new place of power within me, making new connections in my brain, new neural connections are forming in this very moment as my brain is rewiring itself to an even higher plane. And in this space shines the light of infinite wisdom, and it's shining on me. the light of pure intelligence shining on me. This golden light. I'm receptive to this light as I open up my metaphysical hands, as I open up the heart behind my physical heart to receive this blessing. As I rest into the silence for a moment. So as I gently, from this space of pure receptivity, connect with the power of the true me, I find myself ready to step into all spaces with my head held high, to step into all spaces as the full authentic me, stepping forward into all of life's situations where I can give the greatest gift that is me, and where I'm open to receive the greatest gifts, which is the awareness of my divine self. Coming into this space, I'm grateful for this awareness. And so it is.